So it is the end of the week. This is the end of week 3, the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard defamation trial. And so I'm here again doing the regular weekly wrap up that I've been doing with attorney Andrea Burkhart. If you've been following the trial online, you've probably seen her at various places doing a lot of legal commentary. But we wanted to wrap things up here at the end of week 3. Gosh, it's a weird thing, Andrea. It feels like we've been doing this forever.
Yeah, I mean, I compared this early on to being like in the Tour de France, and we are definitely in the mountainous climbing stages of the trial at this point. It is definitely an endurance event, and for a lot of the people who are putting in the effort to stream daily and just keep caught up with everything that's happening as it's happening, is definitely starting to add up to a lot of hours and attention. So yeah, people are starting to feel that, I think.
Yeah, no, your analysis or your comparison with the Tour de France, it's definitely starting to feel apt. And I'm sure to Johnny Depp and certainly Amber Heard way more than us. So what I wanted to do is ask, first of all, just a general question. If you are, let's start with Johnny Depp. If you are Johnny Depp or you're Johnny Depp's team, how are you feeling? What are your feelings or thoughts about the way this week has gone?
Yeah, Johnny Depp and his team are feeling really good about this week. There weren't a lot of the things that are massive attention grabbers, the way that like the first release of the audios, for example, was, but definitely the Dr. Curry testimony about the personality disorders, the feigning the PTSD symptoms, those got people's attention again. But beyond that, it's largely just continuing this systematic process of addressing the allegations that she's made historically in the UK and in her declaration in this case, preemptively basically debunking those. And overall, I think making that incremental progress towards establishing the hoax, that is what they really need to accomplish at this point.
Do you think that if you are, and of course, who knows what the jury is thinking, but do you think that if you're in the jury, you're finding this image of Amber Heard that Johnny Depp's team is painting? You think that you're finding that compelling at this point?
Well, yeah, I think the jury probably gets it by now. They've heard the audios, they've seen the diagnosis, and they're starting to hear how, nobody who's around at these times that she's claimed to, have been severely beaten and stuff. Nobody has seen any injuries. Nobody can really corroborate any of these accounts. And she's the one who is typically aggressive, throwing things. Johnny's coming out on the injured end of that stick. So I expect that the jury at this point does have, they certainly have a very clear perspective of what Johnny Depp thinks Amber Heard is. They're a jury. They have sworn to keep an open mind. And typically most people, in my experience, who do go into jury service, they're very earnest about that. That is their intention. So they're going to be receptive to Amber Heard. And I think they do want to hear from her. They want to be able to see from themselves to be able to make a good judgment. But that at this point, they understand Johnny's position on who she is crystal clear.
Well, and it seems like that would be one of the main objectives of this trial for Johnny Depp's team. So if they've done that, if they've made it clear and relatable, I think that's a good thing. What are you feeling or thinking if you are Amber Heard or your Amber Heard's team at this point? And that could refer to the week before us, the week behind us, or the week before us in front of us.
Yeah, well, they have a lot to accomplish. They know that they are at the disadvantage of being the second to speak. The fact that Johnny is being allowed to kind of set the stage for all of this, and so they're inherently in a reactive type of position. It's something I'm very, very used to as a defense attorney. It's really important that you score points on the state's witnesses to kind of keep the jury's expectation up that, once you're going to have to wait for my side, but once you get it, you're going to have a good reason to want to be paying attention. And I just haven't seen that they have scored those types of points with Johnny's team at all. Potentially maybe even undermining their own, credibility in some ways with some of the tactics that they're taking, some of the things that they are choosing to present as impeachment, that I think most people just don't really consider all that significant. An example of that being with Ed White yesterday, asking him if it was catastrophic, and then going back to his UK testimony where somebody, the attorney there characterized it as catastrophic, and he accepted it at that time. It's just, these are such nitpicky things that ultimately don't go to the core issues of the case anyway. They're also putting a lot of time and investing credibility into a lot of allegations, of course, that are not actually in evidence yet. We've seen kind of a theme of how they do cross-examination is to confront people with things that are not actually in evidence, and we don't know if they're ever going to make it into evidence. Examples of that being, for example, during Officer Saines's deposition, some suggestion that Amber Heard did in fact try to call Officer Saines using the business card that she had been given, and of course there's no evidence of that. The only source that we expect that would probably come from is Amber herself. So they have put themselves in a position where I think they're going to be expected to deliver quite a bit. And just knowing what we know about what the facts and what the evidence available is going to be, just seems increasingly unlikely that they're going to be able to do that.
Do you think that, thank you. That's really insightful. What do you think was the strongest point of Johnny's case this week, or his presentation? Do you think probably the Dr. Curry's testimony?
Yeah, I think it has to be Dr. Curry, just because it's so much in accord with what we heard on the audios. The explanatory power of Dr. Curry's diagnoses, I think, really can't be understated. It explains everything. It explains the rage. It explains what she described as splitting, the rapid shifting between "I love you, Johnny, I love you, I'm sorry I cut off your finger," and "fuck off with your guy." Like within seconds. I think too that at least among the population of folks who have dealt with people, abusive people in relationships, abusive people in their families that have these types of disorders, I think that testimony rings very, very true for them. These are, without a doubt, really challenging conditions to manage, and reflected in Dr. Curry's testimony that they just inflict a massive burden and sometimes just extraordinary damage on the people around them. So for people who have had experience with that, I suggest this was very powerful.
I thought it was pretty powerful. And like you said, it does validate, at least at this point, a lot of what Johnny and others have been testifying to in terms of her behavior. I wanted to, one thing I wanted to ask you, do you feel like there's any danger of, I don't know how to phrase this, but a kind of a backlash in the sense that the jury could start to see Amber as being sort of under siege, or feel sorry for her, or that you feel like Johnny and his team have been very sort of safe in what they've been doing so far?
Well, no, I think that is a legitimate concern, and it's something I did mention on one of the streams last week, is that at this point where it's almost like we're getting to the point where the jury is thinking to itself, like, we get it. You've made the point, we understand what you're saying. because they don't have that.
She crazy. We get it.
Yeah, like how much more do you need to bang this drum? So I think that it did help that yesterday's testimony did shift the gears a little bit, going into the donations, going into the drafting of the op-ed,
Yeah.
because the jury still at this point doesn't have the 10,000-foot picture of what is the universe of what we're talking about here. Why are we talking about Australia? Why are we talking about the Bahamas? And so a lot of these pieces that they're getting, because they don't know how it all fits together, you have to assume they're maybe kind of getting sick of hearing it at this point. So there's still a lot more to go on Johnny's list at this point. That's the other thing that I think we have to take into account.
We've got Jennifer Howell coming up, right? Jennifer Howell.
Yeah, somebody is saying that Jennifer Howell will be testifying on Monday, which is a little bit bizarre, because she is expected to mainly be an impeachment witness for Whitney, and of course Whitney hasn't testified yet. But it does seem like the judge is giving them a whole lot of leeway in terms of what are the order that we're going to present things in. Like, as long as they have a basis, which they do from Whitney's prior testimony in the UK, to believe that what Jennifer Howell has to say will be impeaching, they're allowing that to go ahead and go forward now. Same kind of critique could be raised with Dr. Curry's testimony, that, Amber's credibility really isn't even at issue yet because she hasn't testified. But because, she's on record under oath, she's obviously made specific allegations in this case. It looks like the judge is giving them leeway to kind of do things in not the technical order that you would normally expect to have to do everything in.
I was going to ask, how do you feel about how the judge is doing in general? What is your rating of her?
I don't think that the judge is a bad judge. I also don't think the judge is a biased judge. So I do want to get that out there, because the judge is taking some fire. And part of the problem here is that it really isn't her role to intervene or to make people do things a certain way. It's really the job of the lawyers to raise the objections, argue the objections, and convince her, if there is a problem, that there is a problem. And we have not seen a lot of fight on legal technicalities coming from Johnny's team. There have been some things that have happened that are frankly just bizarre to me. I'm not sure anybody in that courtroom knows what a leading question is. This has been killing me since the very beginning. All of these questions are being objected to as leading, and they're being sustained. So a leading question, first off, leading questions are allowed on cross-examination. They're just not allowed when you're direct examination of your own witness. So that's why it's being raised against Johnny and not against Amber at this point. But a leading question is one that assumes the answer in the question itself. So it's normally things like, don't you agree that, whatever, you're signaling to the witness what I want you to answer. And there have been so many questions that have been objected to on the grounds that they're leading, and that's been sustained when they're not leading at all. And this really culminated for me last week when she sustained a leading objection to the question, how many drugs did you see Johnny Depp do at the wedding? I mean, how many is about as open as you can possibly make a question. So there are some of these patterns here that have been established that I think we're going to be stuck with at this point for the rest of the trial. But it is just a little bit annoying to see that, because it's making it harder for them to be able to elicit the information that these witnesses have and are entitled to bring out.
That's interesting. I wanted to ask you just briefly about the ACLU testimony. So do you feel like, I know that when I was watching online, I was watching on Legal Bites, and some of the people in the comments in the chat were saying that they got a little lost on it in it, or it was boring or not relevant or whatever. But I think that it was actually a pretty powerful interview, in the sense that we get yet another confirmation of Amber Heard's shadiness. So she didn't just beat up on her husband, but as bad as that is, but also she basically sort of lied to, and in a way kind of defrauded these charities. And so anyway, what did you think of that?
Well, I agree. I think it's been a challenge with the video depositions, really, from the outset. It's just one of the necessary challenges of this trial, where you can't compel the live witnesses out of into court if they're not residents of the state. We're stuck with these video depositions. They're boring. They are not conducted really in the same manner as trial testimony is, because you're investigating in a deposition. It's a different tool. Trial testimony, you've already got all the information. You're just there to lay out the relevant parts for the jury to see. So the depositions can be a little bit excruciating. And the problem is, the risk that a lot of those details, again, are going to be lost. I think if the jury was able to make it through, pick up the details enough, that some very critical points came out. The fact that there was no question whatsoever that Amber Heard intended to be talking about Johnny Depp in this op-ed, that the ACLU intended for her to be talking about Johnny Depp in this op-ed. And then also, I loved that they brought out the USA Today article that came out within like 24 hours of the op-ed, where they had explicitly connected the op-ed to Johnny Depp. So everybody knew that it was about Johnny Depp, which of course, we sort of know from the outset. So they have really just done a very good job of, driving the stake through the heart of whatever argument Amber Heard was going to try to make, that this wasn't about Johnny, or nobody, should have expected it to be about Johnny.
Right. And also that it fills in another piece of the puzzle in terms of understanding her as motivated by money throughout this. When I was on Legal Bites, one of the lawyers who is really like hilarious and has some of the best comments, but he's not been following the case up until the trial. And he said, so, and he asked me, he said, so what is the, and he's not on Amber's side or anything, but he said, what is the reason why she's doing this in the first place? Like, what was it? And it's really easy to lose sight of it, because we have gone, she's taken us, Amber Heard has taken us all down such a rabbit hole with the twists and turns of this. But as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of this initially was, and this was something that was basically testified to this week as well. This was basically kind of a ploy to get him to agree to a much bigger divorce settlement. And then it seems like it morphed after that, into some other things too, right? But
yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. And I think that's the other part of the picture that has started to come clear this week, with the extortion letter that came in through Laura Wasser, with the ACLU testimony about the donations. They aren't going to be able to make that final link, I expect, until Amber testifies with what exactly it was that she said in the UK, under oath about this, my entire divorce settlement was donated. That's going to come back and bite her. And it's such a important piece of their case to really undermine, not just that she's lacking credibility, because there's so many options that they have to be able to point that out, but that she doesn't respect or care about the court process. And that's really important, because when the jury understands that, she's going to look you in the eye and lie to your face, they're going to take that a little bit differently than if they think, well, maybe she tells lies in private and stuff, but she'll be impressed with the solemnity of the oath and, the possibility of perjury. And it just demonstrates, no, she absolutely will not.
That's funny because one thing that I wanted to ask you is, will it have turned out, you think, after all of this, that that UK trial, as much as it really seemed to sting Johnny's side, at the time, and it was terrible for his reputation at the time, and I know that it's something that continues to really hurt because people still bring it up. They'll say, well, what about the UK trial? What about the UK trial? But do you think that it will have turned out to have been a good thing for him in the sense that it was an opportunity for Amber to commit so much perjury, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was just one of Amber's miscalculations in my opinion. What the hell does she care if the son gets a judgment? It doesn't affect her one way or the other. But she's got so much ego wrapped into her story and defending her story that she goes down this road of being the star witness in the UK, bringing all her witnesses, forward to support her in the UK. And so, yes, the problem with that is now you're on record. You've made very specific allegations. We saw just in the course of the UK trial how much she had to shift and change things and revise her story and put in a new witness statement because the evidence coming out at trial was not aligning with the version of events that she was presenting. So she's in a stuck position now with that UK testimony, and they've had the opportunity, to go through all of that now with a fine-tooth comb and identify everything that's out there that's available beyond the limited third-party discovery they had in the UK to be able to just blow massive holes in her whole story. So yeah, it was a very stupid move. It reminds me of one of those war movies where they're sticking the helmet out of the trench, to try to flesh out, but then you actually stuck your whole head up. Like, why the fuck did you do that, Amber? That was not a smart move. But that's just who she is. She's going all in on it, so now she's stuck with it.
She, as we've talked about before in prior videos, she has done so many acts of self-sabotage in one lifetime, in one short life. It's really incredible. And it was funny, you were talking about you were talking about her and the adjustments that she was constantly having to make in the UK trial, getting jumbled up in her web of lies, so to speak. And I was just thinking about like the deposition, that's available online. I don't know how she's going to testify next week, and maybe she will have changed her style and be calmer and everything. But that deposition, people go online and can look it up. She's at times she's very like frenetic, and there's just like kind of word salad coming out of her mouth. And Johnny, then this, but then I think it was
grab me by the hair.
And
let me look at your eye.
It's just such a contrast to how Johnny Depp, the very sort of slow and very sort of intentional, and almost somnambulent style that Johnny Depp has, but still, like, it's going to be in such contrast to her, unless her team. So here's my thing. This is the last thing I wanted to ask you. I remember in the 2008 election, you remember Sarah Palin, right?
Oh yes.
Who doesn't?
Who can forget?
Yeah. And here's the thing, Sarah Palin, so in the presidential elections, we all know there's one vice presidential candidate debate. And so going into that debate, as I remember, Sarah Palin, she had given a series of disastrous interviews. Most of us remember this, like just word salad. It's just a joke, right? And so I remember that everybody was really just tuned into this vice presidential debate because they expected that, based on her prior stuff, that this was going to be just a disaster. And what ended up happening, she didn't win the debate, but she actually performed okay, and it was an above expectation performance. So my question to you is, I know that there are a number of Depp supporters and people who've been following this, myself included, who have such a crazy view of Amber that we are hoping and expecting for a similar performance to the deposition, something that's very problematic and out there or whatever. Do you think that she might pull a Sarah Palin and we might actually see a surprisingly okay performance?
Well, I think that we will on her direct. I think that she's going to be able to pull off, probably a pretty convincing story on her direct examination, because she's not being challenged in any way, and she's the center of attention, and it's all the opportunity to externalize the blame,
Right.
that is built into her. So it's really not going to be until cross-examination that we're in a similar context as that deposition. And if these traits are as embedded in her fundamental wiring as Dr. Curry, it has predicted essentially that they are, and as we've, heard on all these audios, seem to be reflected there, then I just don't see how she is possibly going to withstand that. She is going to be made out to be a liar. And that's one of the things we've heard from the audios she's very sensitive about. It's part of how I think she manipulates people into letting her get away with all this bullshit, is that she lies. People know that she's lying, but she uses this guilt tool to try to keep people from calling her out on that. And that's not going to work against an opposing counsel in a jury trial. So no, I think that there's a very low probability that she would make it through all of the cross-examination without those true colors coming out.
So
what do
you
you
think? Well, so I was just going to ask, so you think that there will be probably at least several moments where she will make herself look pretty bad, or will be kind of stumped, so to speak, or awkward?
I mean, I expect so. Angry. I expect she's going to get angry because she's not going to be in control of the situation. She's going to be confronted with the stuff that makes her look bad. She's not an idiot, she's pathological, but she's not actually dumb. And so she knows that the jury is going to see this as, her being dishonest. And that's something that is going to be extremely threatening to her. So yeah, I expect she's going to get pissed off, and we'll get some of that same, rage acting that we saw in the deposition.